So guys, this is a story that I've done several updates on this channel, man. This is the ongoing trial of a member of a GD set on the south side called Evans Mob. Okay, and you also may have heard me refer to them as Guttagang or Hit Squad. You know, they obviously, like most of these sets on the south side of Chicago, man, they got their own beefs. They got their own war going on. So one of their members, a guy named Pierre, was convicted of killing a guy named Glenn. And he now has been sentenced to life in prison. And this is a conclusion to a case that it took a long time, man. And the media said, as a member of Chicago's Evans Mob gang faction, Pierre was devoted to an almost inconceivable cycle of violence, where murder begets murder and shootings are followed by social media taunts, vows of revenge, and more shooting. That was according to a federal judge. And again, I mean, the self-snitching, man, it's out of control out there on the internet, man. They said it's a tragedy that there are folks in our communities who grow up thinking this is normal life, who accept this kind of life and buy into it. That's according to the U.S. District Judge, man. So, you know, everybody who encourages these guys to do this, you can ask them if it's worth it when they're spending literally the rest of their life behind bars. And they said that cycle officially ended for Pierre moments later when the judge sentenced him to mandatory life in prison for the December 2014 killing of a 23-year-old named Glenn at a Southside convenience store, allegedly in retribution for the murder of one of the fellow gang members from Pierre's crew from Evans Mob 2 years earlier. And that was actually a shooting that Glenn had nothing to do with. So Glenn was entering the store at 79th and Eberhart when he held the door open for Pierre as he walked out. And I mentioned this in an earlier video that I dropped on the channel. He actually held the door open for the guy who killed him. And Pierre returned a few seconds later and shot Glenn as he stood between displays of Fritos and candy near the register as a mother and her young daughter ducked for cover. So the judge said this was cold-blooded, premeditated, calculated, but nevertheless senseless, in the wake of which Pierre showed no remorse. And he was convicted by a jury last year of murder in the aid of racketeering. They said, to the contrary, the record at trial revealed repeated taunts to rival gangs after the murder, the antithesis of remorse. And it wasn't enough for Pierre to kill Glenn, but he kept on pouring salt into the wound. So in addition to Glenn's killing, the judge found Pierre liable for another revenge shooting a few months later that badly wounded a gang rival named Deshaun and killed an innocent bystander, a guy named Hamoud, who was 23 years old, in the hallway of an apartment building that they shared. Now, I had talked about that on the channel, that Deshaun was basically being penalized by the law for refusing to snitch, even on an op. Okay, so again, the rules nowadays, and this is something that I've had conflicts with some guys on the channel about, man. The rules nowadays is that if you tell on anybody, ops, definitely on your own homies, but even on ops, if you tell on them, you're labeled as a snitch. You can't say nothing to the police, period. And I had mentioned that, you know, some of the gang leaders back in the day had done that. So, you know, that's something that the guys nowadays who are like worshiping these gang leaders, well, okay, these gang leaders, I mean, they were telling on the ops, like big time now. Some guys on the channel had said, well, that's the art of war and stuff like that. And I brought up the fact that, okay, maybe in the case of like the mafia or something like that, but in the case of these black gang leaders, this is during like the 60s, 50s and 60s, okay? And like this is snitching on like another black dude at a time when these gangs were all forming supposedly to be like, you know, defense against basically white guys who were, you know, getting down on them and stuff. So that to me seems like a real stab in the back to one's own community. But I mean, you guys can let me know what you think in the comment section, man. But the judge also found him liable for that shooting, but Pierre was never charged in that shooting, though, because, again, Deshaun refused to identify him for a grand jury investigating the Evans Mob gang. So the judge said there was plenty of other evidence that Pierre was responsible, including undercover recordings of Deshaun telling his brother that Pierre was the gunman. So even though Deshaun wasn't willing to tell, they still, you know, tapped him and got him on tape, not voluntarily, but it, like, you know, they can tap your phone, they can hack it, whatever, and they got these undercover recordings. They can bug your place, and they found out that he was saying that he was the gunman. Now, a lot of times gang members are actually wrong about the person who did it, so that in and of itself can't be really evidence, because a lot of times these guys just jump to conclusions. Like they'll just name, you know, one of the top shooters of the other gang as, well, it must have been him, especially if it's a guy in a car that's just coming through. they'll just assume something, and basically put it on a guy. And so a rival saying he did it isn't enough. And he apparently was running from the scene. So the judge said that while Pierre was not charged in Hamoud's murder, it had no official bearing on his sentence. And he said the facts deserve to see the light of day. So before the sentence was handed down, two of Glenn's sisters spoke in court about the loss of their brother, the only boy in the family, who left behind 5 nieces and nephews. He said, it gives me really bad panic to even think about it, to think about what to say or even how to feel about it. One of the sisters said, we shouldn't be here. So the other sister said that it made her sad to think that her kids will never get to know their uncle and to listen to him talk and smile, just being the little brother that he always was. She said, I just want to see him rest peacefully now. So the judge asked him if he wanted to make a statement, and he declined. So at the time that he was killed, Glenn was recovering from being shot and critically wounded at the same intersection months earlier. And so this was the second, time that he had an attempt on his life. And after one of Glenn's friends was killed in 2013, somebody wrote a chilling warning. They said in red marker on the wall of a perfume store over at 79th and Eberhard, they said, quote, "You next, Glenn." And after he was shot in the summer of 2014, Glenn spent months in the hospital. And his grandmother told the media that the day that Glenn was discharged, he went right back to the streets. She was interviewed, and man, that was a really sad interview, man. Apparently, things were not going well. You know what I'm saying? Guys get into the streets, and a lot of times it takes them away from their family. I mean, like emotionally, like distance-wise. They know that this stuff is going on in the streets, and she was saying like they had tried to stop him, and he wasn't stopping, and that creates a lot of conflict at home, man. So Pierre, meanwhile, was still serving out a sentence on a federal weapons conviction when he was indicted in Glenn's killing in November of 2018 as part of the larger investigation into the Evans mob gang. So this all happened like 2013, 2014, and he was already in there for years when all these new charges were coming, man. So I mean, basically, majority of his life is going to be spent behind bars. It's really like giving your life to the system. But anyways, they said that Evans mob are GDs, which is true, and the prosecutor alleged that they use murder, assault, and other acts of violence to protect territory and boost their status on social media. So according to court records, the day that Glenn was killed, the birthday of one of Pierre's fellow gang members who had been killed in 2012 was coming up. So these gangs do this, what I'm saying? They ride on the day of a fallen member. That's like so-and-so day, or that's the day that they choose to go and turn up, in his honor. So Pierre had posted on social media that he was going out to look for ops to shoot on that day. So shortly before 3 p.m., Pierre walked into the Eberhard food store where a mother was ordering a sandwich for her 8-year-old daughter. And he looked around the store before walking towards the door where Glenn was coming in. So Glenn, his street name was G-Mac. He held the door open for Pierre, who stepped outside before pulling his shirt up. And this is how the Tribune this is how the Chicago Tribune is relating it. Shout out to them. But he briefly stepped outside before pulling his shirt up over the lower half of his face and going back into the store, where he shot Glenn 3 times with a revolver. Now, check it out. He was just in the store, okay, with his face exposed on camera. He goes out of the store, pulls his shirt over his face to hide his face, but it's too late because he was already just on camera. You see what I'm saying? Like, guys will do this stuff in such a way that it's like guaranteed they're going to get booked. And I've seen this a million times, man. I've seen guys on camera, like sticking up a place with a face mask on, and the face mask is pulled down so that their face is exposed. Now, you might say, well, that's basically giving themselves to the police. But in Chicago, man, there's so much stuff going on that even at that, a lot of times these guys don't get booked. But in this particular case, he did, and he's got only himself to blame. I mean, anybody that's saying, well, it's because this guy folded, a lot of times you'll see fingers getting pointed after the fact, and it's because he told. And these guys are like basically putting themselves right in the police's lap, putting their face on camera, bragging about it on social media, talking about it in songs. I mean, guys got nobody but themselves to blame for this, man. I mean, getting booked. So anyways, he shot Glenn 3 times with a revolver. And they said as the shots went off, the mother and her child asked an employee that was making her sandwich if they could go someplace and hide. And that was according to the assistant U.S. attorney. And they said they wound up hiding in the bathroom. The employee who told the woman and her child to go into the bathroom stayed low until the shooting was over. So the 8-year-old is hiding in the bathroom while somebody gets murked right outside. This is an 8-year-old, bro. Can you imagine like the trauma that would be? So according to an FBI search warrant affidavit in Pierre's case on Christmas Day in 2014, which was 2 days after Glenn's killing, Pierre posted a photo of a Ruger semi-automatic handgun and a message that read, "Look, man, I got the Ruger on me now. I got like 4 baby choppers. Know what I mean? I feel like Osama mother effing bin Laden." So in another video posted to social media on October 7th of 2015, he captioned, quote, "Back down memory lane, no ops." And Pierre, quote, reminisced about the murder as he stood in front of the Eberhard store while stating, "Gang, gang, 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 Guttagang," and yelling "Mac sauce, hot and spicy." So he's dissing G-Mac. You see what I'm saying? So Pierre also posted messages about, quote, smoking on G-Mac and about G-Mac being in his blunt, which, according to the media, is slang that disrespects the dead person. And it's something that started basically, the exact person who started it, I don't know, but it used to be a respectful thing. You know, when guys would, light up a blunt for their dead homie or whatever, they'd be like, I'm smoking so-and-so, like STL, they used to say that about Tuca. Like, they used to say, I'm smoking Tuca, okay, because they were like, it was like in his honor and his memory. But then, the ops of these various gangs, they started to do that as a disrespect. So the same thing, they just turned it around. The same thing they were using to memorialize the guy, they turned it into a diss. And so anyways, Pierre is now sentenced to life in prison, and you can see, man. So he was posting back in front of the store, okay, where the murder had happened, saying, "Back down memory lane, no ops." Okay, so I mean, it's basically, I've seen a lot of situations, man, like, and guys would be like, you telling, and these same guys would be dropping like subliminals, okay, dropping obvious hints, and they didn't consider that telling. Social media posts of theirs, songs of theirs, I'm like, everybody knows what you mean. Everybody knows what you're referring to. It's the same thing. At the end of the day, like, you think the cops are just like don't know who this guy is or who that guy is or what this means? Guys do this all over social media, man. You can see it. I mean, most of these guys would still be free if they just weren't telling on themselves 24/7. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, that they would be free, because, it's not. But there's a certain point in life when guys kind of fall off with this stuff. And you'll hear the gang members even say that, like, if guys got to do something like that when they get older, like, they'll give that job to one of their little homies. Because it's the youth that are doing the majority of the stuff. I told you guys, like, the average age of a killer in Chicago, last stat I heard was 15. Very young. So if you can just get them past a certain age, you can save a lot of lives, because that young, wild age, you see how it is. I did videos on numerous young gangs, and it's the young guys doing all the wild, crazy stuff, man. After they get to a certain point, they kind of chill out. But that's after a lot of guys have already been dead or locked up. And for them, it's too late. Social media will get guys clout, but it'll get guys down and out as well. So I wonder, like, how the streets would be today if it wasn't for, like, Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff. Like, sometimes I really wonder what it would look like. But because guys blame the fact that guys do this today on there's no big homies and stuff. But see, I see some of the older guys doing the social media stuff today too. So I wonder how it would be. I really do, man. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section. The feds can use all that stuff as a motive. See, as part of the case, they can say, well, they were doing it to increase their standing, okay, or their social media status or whatever. Now they can use that, and they're using it left and right. Like as a purpose, as a motive. Because back in the day, it used to be hard to pin something on somebody, like if they didn't get any money from it, and if there was no direct link to any revenge killing or anything like that, and he hadn't, and the killer didn't make any statements about, like, this was for this guy or that, then it would be hard to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury that you did it for such and such a reason. But today, see, they can paint a picture with all the posts and all the statements you've made on social media and say, well, he did it to just, gain clout. And maybe you didn't do it for that, but still, it's not what it is. It's what it looks like to the jury. You see what I'm saying? And either way, you're still not innocent. So, I advise everybody to just delete everybody that's in the streets to just delete their social media. And what a lot of guys will find is if they do that, a lot of them won't even be in the streets as deep, because, like I said, half this stuff these days is getting instigated by the social media, or getting guys out there chasing clout, because like I said, clout is the biggest drug in the street and the deadliest. This is your boy Winnie C. Report. I'm out.